Laura sat at her vanity, brushing her hair in slow, deliberate strokes. The light from the setting sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman at peace, but inside, she was far from it. It had been weeks since the first pang of doubt struck her. Anthony had always been busy, his career demanding and his schedule erratic. But recently, something had shifted. He was more distant, distracted even when he was home. He'd canceled date nights, left for business trips at strange hours, and there were the whispers. Rumors among the wives of the country club about Anthony being seen with someone else. At first, she dismissed the notion. Her husband couldn't possibly be having an affair. They had built a life together, an empire. They were the envy of their social circle. But now, the little things were piling up, and Laura could no longer ignore the unease gnawing at her. Anthony had become an enigma. The man who once confided in her, shared his dreams and fears, was now a stranger. He was too careful, too rehearsed when answering her questions, and Laura had learned to trust her instincts. Her phone buzzed on the dresser, breaking her from her reverie. It was a message from Julie, one of her closest friends. "Are you still coming to lunch tomorrow?" Laura quickly typed a reply. "Yes, see you there." As she set the phone down, an idea began to form in her mind. Julie's husband, Robert, was in the same social circles as Anthony. Robert had access to the kind of information that was shared behind closed doors, the whispers that men assumed never reached their wives. Laura was no fool. If something was happening behind her back, she intended to find out. The charity event that night went as smoothly as anyone would expect. The ballroom was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the gentle hum of small talk. Anthony moved through the crowd with his usual charm, his hand resting on Laura's back as they greeted familiar faces. But Laura was watching him more closely now, the way his eyes flickered towards his phone when he thought no one was looking, the slightly nervous edge to his laugh when a young woman across the room waved in his direction. Laura followed his gaze, her heart tightening in her chest. Rachel Caldwell, the woman who'd been the subject of more than one whispered conversation among the wives. Laura had always thought the rumors were just that, idle gossip. But tonight, watching the subtle interaction between her husband and the young woman, Laura felt the undeniable sting of suspicion. "Is everything all right, darling?" Anthony's voice pulled her back to the moment. His eyes were warm, concerned even. He placed a hand on her arm. Laura smiled softly. "Of course, just a little tired." Anthony nodded, his concern evaporating as he scanned the room once more, his hand falling away from her as quickly as it had been placed. Laura's smile faltered. It was in that small gesture, the absence of the warmth that once defined their marriage, that she realized something was very wrong. The next day, Laura sat across from Julie at their favorite cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. They had met every week for lunch since their children were little, but today, Laura had a different agenda. Julie was already chatting about the latest developments in the neighborhood when Laura casually steered the conversation toward their husbands. "Has Robert been traveling much lately?" Laura asked, keeping her tone light. Julie nodded, sipping her cappuccino. "Oh, you know how it is. The usual meetings, networking events. It seems like every time he's home, he's already planning the next trip." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Why do you ask? Has Anthony been away more than usual?" Laura hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Yes, and I don't know. Something feels off. Julie leaned forward, lowering her voice. Laura, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I've heard some things. About Anthony. What kind of things? Laura's heart raced, though her voice remained steady. Robert mentioned seeing Anthony out a few times when he was supposed to be traveling for business. And he wasn't alone. The words hit Laura like a punch to the gut, but she kept her composure. Who was he with? Julie hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. A younger woman. Rachel Caldwell. Laura nodded slowly, as if she hadn't already suspected it. Thank you, Julie. I had a feeling, but I needed to be sure. Julie reached across the table and squeezed Laura's hand. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? Laura looked out the window for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. I'm going to make sure Anthony regrets ever crossing me. That evening, Laura sat at her desk in their shared home office, her fingers hovering over her laptop's keyboard. She had just spent the afternoon with her lawyer, David, outlining her plan. She didn't want to act impulsively. She needed to be methodical, precise. If Anthony thought he could cheat on her and get away with it, he had severely underestimated her. The first step was gathering proof. Laura wasn't about to confront Anthony without hard evidence. Over the next several weeks, she began quietly documenting his every move. She hired a private investigator who confirmed her worst fears. Anthony wasn't just having a fling. He was living a double life. Rachel was young, beautiful, and utterly naive about the man she was involved with. She had no idea that Anthony had built his success by manipulating everyone around him, including her. As the investigator handed Laura photos of Anthony and Rachel, wrapped in each other's arms at a hotel, Laura's blood boiled. But she didn't lash out. She stayed calm, collected. She scanned through their bank accounts, noticing the strange withdrawals and transfers. Anthony was hiding money, funneling it into secret accounts. But Laura was ahead of him. She'd already spoken with a financial expert and set up her own accounts, ready to take everything from him when the time was right. Laura wasn't just going to leave him. She was going to ruin him,